let's get creative with some acrylic paint. Let's go over our supplies real quick. I'm going to be using my flat large brush, my flat medium brush, my round small brush, a wiping rag, a sponge, water bucket, my canvas panel, your new tabletop easel, your metallic acrylic paints, and the primary colors on a paint palette. I also have a mixing tray. Now let's start with that sky in the background with a little bit of water on your brush. Wipe off the extra, and just using red, we're gonna start with that sky using the top part of your panel. I'm getting a little more water every time I get more paint on my brush. And you want a nice smooth coverage. So every time I'm getting some more paint, I'm just dipping it into my water, getting a little bit of moisture, and putting a nice smooth layer. Now I added a tiny bit of black as well as red on my brush. A little bit of water, some more black going on at the top. And I'm gonna slowly transition from that deep, dark, maroon, black sky into that really soft, mystical red. Now, if I'm going too fast, feel free to pause the video and you can take your time by just getting used to covering the canvas with the amount of paint and the amount of water. What you don't want is really chunky clumps of paint. So notice I'm going very quickly with a little bit of moisture on your brush. That will help blend that color from the black down into the red. I'm getting a little bit more red and a tiny bit of white this time. And notice how I started below the red section. I started on the white part of the canvas, putting a few strokes, adding that layer of paint, and now I'm going to be blending it up into that red. So we're trying not to have straight lines that separate the color. We want all of those different colors to blend nicely together. So if you notice a straight line, you just want to be dabbing some paint over the line that separates the color, and then just a little bit of moisture and brush, brush, brush. I added a little bit of water. I'm cleaning my brush and I'm getting some of that drip and the extra hair. Just smoothing it across. So if you do put a little bit too much of water on your brush, it's totally fine. Just dab it on the paper towel or your rag. Do a few strokes and see, I wiped mine up. It's very easy to remove paint. All right, here let's start on the clouds. I just have my Papa Bear, my large flat brush is what I call him. And I'm just dabbing some white paint onto the cloud. Starting to make some texture in that background. Now here you can have some nice texture and get a little bit of chunky paint. So I'm scooping I'm scooping the white paint onto my brush, adding a little bit of red and white. So now I'm dabbing it onto the canvas in a new section, just creating some drifty clouds in the sky. So to create that fullness of the cloud, really want to play with the amount of white you use and how transparent the white is and how opaque. So adding more paint to a section is going to make it more opaque. And that means you're going to create more highlights on your clouds and make it look more realistic. So I'm just dabbing some of that soft white into the clouds. Notice how I'm using my brush from left to right. And now I'm trying to make it a little softer in that background. So I'm going to wipe my brush, clean it off, and now I'm just going to use a dry brush technique and rub over. Now I have some red paint. I'm adding that into the clouds to give it more dimension. So we want it to have a little bit more weight on the bottom. Blending it into the sky, making it look like it drifts out in the distance. Still trying to keep some of that opaque, really thick white on the edges to create that highlight. Now here you can have fun with your sponge as well. I'm just trying to clean up a little bit of that. Another white layer makes it nice and crisp. Now the cool thing about skies, they can look any way that you want. There's no right or wrong cloud. Some clouds can be really puffy. Some clouds can be really wispy and barely visible. You know, you can have a variety of different clouds, a variety of different skies. So have fun with this. It doesn't have to look like mine. I'm just going to add some more swirly lines using the white, adding some more details into my clouds, having a little bit of play. Remember to have fun when you're painting. And please don't try to make your sky look exactly like mine. That's not what art's about. Use this as an inspiration. You can pause the video at any time and have a go at creating some new clouds. You may even want to get a little teeny bit of black and add some stormy clouds in the distance. This is a cool time. You could even pause the video and do some flicks in your sky and have some twinkly stars. Now that we used our brush to create the sky and the clouds, now I'm going to have fun with my sponge. I'm going to dip the corner into my white paint, and then I'm going to dab my sponge onto my palette and offload it so it doesn't have a lot of chunky white. And then I'm going to go to my canvas panel and dab, 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 swirl, swirl, swirl. So there's not a lot of paint. I'm dabbing on and swirling. Remember to have fun with this, guys. There are no two skies that are alike. So you can dab, add a little bit of paint, swirl it, making a transparent, kind of wispy cloud. Soft lines in the sky. A little bit more paint will make that edge more opaque. Turning my sponge, adding a little bit of dabs here and there, and then brushing for some wispy marks. So grab your mixing tray and we're going to mix a new color. It's a very tricky color, but first I'm going to break it down into steps. So let's make a basic orange. Get a good scoop of yellow and wipe that on your tray. Now I want you to get a little bit less red and add that to your tray and mix a basic orange. Now, because red is more bossy than yellow, you're always gonna need more yellow than red. Now you're gonna add even less blue. So we're going to use the primary colors yellow, less red, and even less blue to make a brown. If your brown turns out too green, just add more red. If you want your brown to be a little bit darker, add some black. Now we're gonna take our medium flat brush and we're gonna paint the outline of our mountain. Now it looks very effective if you have some nice highs and lows, creating a very edgy mountain edge. We call this an organic line, where it's up and down and it's not straight, it's not horizontal. It's very unique and organic. It looks really effective if it has a nice, really high cliff edge. And then you can decide where you want to put your wolf. So I'm just pressing my brush down, getting all of that paint off, making a nice, solid, organic outline. This is going to require quite a lot of brown, so go ahead and make some more if you ran out. Yellow, a little less red, and a tiny bit of blue. Again, if you want it a little bit darker, add some black. If it goes a little bit too green, add some more yellow and red. Here I just turned my canvas panel over. It's a lot easier to paint the top half of your canvas if you're using this tabletop easel because it has a really nice edge that's going to hold your panel, but it's not so easy painting the bottom lip. So go ahead and turn your canvas. You can have fun adding some texture using a different brush. You could even use your sponge and do some paint dabbing. Just make sure you completely cover up underneath that mountain line and put a nice layer of paint all the way down. Now we're going to clean off our brush and change to our medium flat brush using a little bit of black. I'm going to add just some depth to this mountain edge, and I'm going to put some black on using that flat edge of the brush. I'm going to get some nice depth to this mountain. Now we can grab our sponge, dip it into the black. I'm also going to offload it into the brown paint, so into my mixing tray, just to get some more really cool texture into those rocks. Use your sponge, doing some dabbing, adding that really rocky edge. I'm going to be moving my sponge to the bottom of the brown, all around, going to that right side of the canvas as well, adding some really nice texture to those rocks. You can always take a clean or a dry part of your sponge and offload some of that paint. So on the top right of my rock, you'll notice I come in with a drier part of the sponge and kind of smooth out some of that black. Yeah, there we go. I'm just taking the medium flat brush and adding a few more angles to make a few more mountain lines. I just thought the bottom of the mountains looked a little bit too brown and bare. So we're going to add some more angles to break that large brown section up. We need to add some more texture with your sponge. Want it nice and bumpy and rough. I'm changing to my large flat brush just to add some more highlights. You can keep with the same brush, but I was just trying to be a little bit quicker by using that clean brush, adding some white and yellow, and adding some highlights just on the top edge, some of those rocks. Now I'm using some dark black, and I'm just adding some nice shadows on the lower surface of each rock. So the highlights on the top, shadows on the bottom. Continue that until you really enjoy that rock texture. You want some edgy highlights, some soft highlights, some edgy shadows, and some soft. When you have that darker foreground, which is the space that's closest to you in the canvas, if it's darker and more intense, it looks closer. Whereas the objects further away are going to look a little bit more gray, a little bit softer. Now you can decide where your moon is going to go. Are you going to have a real big full moon right in the middle? Are you going to have a moon peeking up from the rocks? Is your moon going to be a crescent moon? Or is it going to be a nice full one that's going to come up from one side of your canvas and your wolf is going to be howling at it from the other? So make those choices. If you're a little bit nervous about making a circle, you can always grab a stencil. Here I'm using an old tape roll. I'm going to put my tape roll stencil in the top left section, and I'm just going to paint the inside of my circle. Some may say it's cheating, but studies say that there's no human that can draw a perfect circle. So I say, think smarter, not harder. So fill that moon up with a really nice thick layer of white paint. If it's too transparent and you can see through it, wait for that layer to dry and then you can come back in with another layer. Or you can do the next step with me. Now I'm just filling in my first layer. If your white is a little bit too transparent, you can always put a second layer on. Or you can add some cool texture. Here I'm using my finger. I'm using a little bit of silver. So you can open your metallic paint. So you can pause this video, dipping your finger into the silver paint, just doing some dabs for the craters. Just dabbing. You might want to add a little bit of blue and white. If you get too much, you can offload it and add some cool little finger dabs. You can add your own personal details and make it your own. Have fun. It's the most important thing. Okay, so I turn my canvas over, and now we're going to decide where we want to put our wolf. You have that really cool organic edge. You may have more of a mountain for your wolf to stand on. My wolf is going to be placed more in the valley. So decide where you want to put your wolf, and we're going to paint the outline first. So I'm going to break it into shapes so you can follow along and pause the video when you need to. And another tip is start small. You can always make a bigger wolf and cover up some mistakes. Here I'm using my round, pointy baby bear brush. And I have a little bit of water, and notice I'm rolling my brush into the black paint and pulling my brush away. So now it's really pointy. Decide what angle you want your wolf's head to be pointing. Mine's going to be howling at the moon, so the head's going to be pointing in that left direction. Let's start with the head. I'm going to start with that horizontal top line of his head, angled over towards the moon. Now let's paint the triangle of the inside of his mouth. I'm just pulling that black paint into his mouth and painting that little sideways V. Now paint the bottom section of his mouth, the curved part of his chest, and you can pull that line back for his tummy. I'm going back to the top of his head, just making sure that the tip of his mouth is good, and I'm going to pull that ear line coming down. Follow the black paint down his back and put a little bump going down for his tail. Now coming to his chest, I'm just painting his tummy and then pulling the black paint down for his left leg. Now remember, this is just a sketch. If you have to adjust, you can make him bigger. You'll notice in a minute I end up changing the shape. The outline of my wolf is a little bit off, so I add some changes. It's okay if you have to make some edits. Just sketch the inside lines until you like the outline, and then you're going to fill them in. So I'm painting the tail, and I have two really skinny legs. I know it looks kind of funny. So I'm going to fill those in first and decide where I want that other back leg. Now remember, they have interesting bone structure for the back leg. They have that curled section. So one of my legs is going to be tucked behind part of the rock, and the other one's going to be closer to us. So I know it looks a little bit unusual, but with the perspective of that back leg, once you paint it in and have, it's called a silhouette when you're painting a solid black figure with a light source in the background. So we're going to paint the silhouette of our wolf by filling him in. Now here you can make some little changes. You can increase the amount of black paint. You can kind of change where your outlines are. I'm going to make my outline a little bit bigger so I can emphasize the points of his ear and his mouth. Make any of those adjustments and changes if you need to. So all the sketching lines that we did for the outline, you can cover those up with a nice thick layer of black paint. Once you have your wolf completely painted in, take a step back and see if you like that silhouette. Is there any lines that you can change? I noticed that the front two legs are very skinny and that front chest is quite large. So I'm going to make that front leg a little bit bigger. little bit of a shadow underneath him because he's blocking out that moon highlight from where he's standing. So I was just going to add some dark brown. You can add some more highlights just under the moon. I'm going to use some white. That white highlight can go on the front side of all of the rocks that are touching that moon's light. You can also add some white highlights on your wolf if you'd like. I'm just adding a few last minute touches to my wolf. I want a straight, crisp edge on my black, and I don't want any see-through parts. But just wait a couple minutes for that first layer to dry. Otherwise, you'll just be moving the paint around and it won't actually cover it up. An artwork looks complete when all of your canvas has a nice layer of paint. There's no fuzzy edges and there's no unfinished sections. First layer, dry for a second, then come back in with my medium flat brush and put another layer of black paint, making that nice silhouette, nice and opaque. So you learned a few keywords today. Opaque means you can't see through it. When you're painting, especially moons and wolf silhouettes and rocks, you don't want to see through it. So make sure when you're doing landscape artwork or painting in general that you're always putting a nice complete layer on your objects. You don't want a see-through wolf unless you want to make the ghost of a wolf. And the moon highlights, you can always add some more wherever you think it's going to be shining. Make it more dramatic. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, so I'm just kind of adding some little edges of white as that last little highlight. Make it pop. Highlights, shadows. You learn transparent, that means see-through. The clouds, some of them had a transparent texture. They were very wispy. Maybe you had some very opaque clouds that were really puffy and dark. I'm just adding some more shading in my rocks by using just some dark black right here and kind of using a dry brush technique where I'm scrubbing that paint into those rock faces. That adds a nice layer, gives it some more depth. There you go, guys. Enjoy. Last thing, you always sign your artwork. I use my baby bear with a little bit of black or white, and I write my artist signature, which is my initials, AP. And I always write the last two numbers of the year to remind me when I made it. So my artist signature is AP21 for this year of 2021. So thanks for joining us, guys. We'd love to see your creations. Please take a photo of you holding your artwork and share it with us. You can tag us on Instagram at TheSeedCW. Take it easy, guys. See you next time. Bye.